everyone. It is Sunday evening as I am filming this, and we are going to get this weekly reading vlog started with this book, Sound Worship by Scott. I have no idea how to say his last name. How would you say that last name? I have no idea. Anyways, this is all about, well, it says a guide to making musical choices in a noisy world. That's kind of a misleading subtitle. I think it is about that, but it's more about worship generally, worshiping through music more specifically, and then kind of tangentially related to that, how music choices affect us, I guess, and our ability to worship, perhaps, maybe. So it was very interesting. There wasn't anything in here that I vehemently disagreed with or struggled to understand or anything like that. I think for the scope of the book, like, you know, being like a small, short guide type of book, I think it tried to tackle too many subjects at once. And if it had honed in on a couple of those topics and fleshed them out a little more thoroughly, it would be a much more helpful little book. Whereas it tried to tackle too much in its scope, but because it couldn't tackle each subject thoroughly, it ended up kind of just touching on them and not laying a solid enough foundation to really shore up his arguments. I would be curious to read. I think he has a longer, more in-depth book on the same subject, or more than one maybe. Actually, I think he writes a lot about, you know, related aspects of this. So I would be interested in reading a more lengthy book by him. One thing that I found very interesting was towards the end, he had a really good chapter discussing beauty and building a theological foundation for the understanding of beauty. And I liked a lot of what he said. I did feel like some of his exegesis of scripture was not accurate. Like, I don't think it was quite done correctly. I disagree with some of his conclusions and some of the ways that he interpreted certain passages of scripture. However, I don't think that his position was unbiblical. I just think he used passages incorrectly. He could have used other passages more successfully to make his arguments. And yeah, anyway, I don't want to talk too much more about it. It doesn't need a great in-depth discussion for the purposes of this channel. But anyways, I did feel like there were a couple of times his application of scripture was misapplied. And I would not use those passages in the way that he used them. However, I don't think that his conclusions were necessarily thereby unbiblical, because he did have solid biblical foundation support for a lot of what he said. Maybe not everything, but a lot of what he said. So anyway, it was interesting. It was good. I am going to give this to my older son and just have him, it's something we've had a lot of conversations about back and forth. And I'm just curious to hear his thoughts, where he would agree and or disagree with the author of this book. And anyway, I kind of want to read a book that kind of just tackles more in depth the concept of a theology of beauty. So if anybody has any recommendations, I know that there are books out there, because I feel like I've heard people talking about them, but at the moment I can't pull any names or authors off the top of my head. If anybody has any recommendations for me, let me know. One thing I thought was very interesting, he talked a lot about how music he used the word teach your emotions. I think train might be a better word, because music communicates emotions. And he pointed out the illustrations of how David used music to calm Saul when he was distressed or disturbed by a troubling spirit. And there were other situations where the Bible talks about music being used to regulate, I guess, if you will, emotions. And it is a powerful tool in that way. I think just most of us, we think, okay, in a particular moment, we can think of listening to specific music either to cheer us up or, you know, that speak to, you know, if we're having a quiet moment or a sad moment or whatever. But stepping back and thinking more generally about how whatever our steady diet of music is, what is it teaching us emotionally? How is it training our emotions to respond and react? So anyway, it was very interesting. What's also interesting is this morning our pastor was out of town. And so the founding pastor of our church, who is retired now, he preached. And he actually preached a really fantastic sermon about music and about singing in church and worship. And it was a different subject from this book, but there were a lot of like interrelated thoughts. And I actually very much enjoyed my pastor's sermon and his thoughts on it, probably more than I enjoyed this book, actually. So that's that. I am still reading Divine Rivals. I guess I'm probably about a third of the way through. I finished part 1. I don't know how many parts there are. I am really loving the writing in there. It's so beautiful. I am a sucker for good writing. If I had the book handy, and I don't feel like going and getting it, I would, like, I've highlighted or underlined so many things. I'm really enjoying annotating this one, which I don't always, especially with just like a fiction book, but it's just really beautiful writing that I'm really loving. And I was totally surprised by that, was not expecting that, and enjoying that very much. So who knows where the story will go from here, but I am, honestly, it can be a terrible story, but if the writing is beautiful, I'm here for it. I just love words. I love it when authors find a way to communicate through words in surprising and unexpected ways that are also beautiful. And they present the story to your mind in just a beautiful way. Like, it's the difference between, being dressed in sweats and a t-shirt and just being, very practical and ready to work hard and, do the nitty-gritty things of life, or being dressed in a fancy ball gown, ready to go somewhere fancy. I feel like the writing in this one is more like, the more elegantly dressed, beautifully clothed writing. And I love it. I'm enjoying that. So that's what I've got so far. I will see you next time. Bye. Hello, it is Monday evening, and I wanted to make a little clip because my reading has taken a bit of a disappointing turn, and I just wanted to share that with you. But first of all, I am finally getting around to making this literary tea, Jane Austen, which I got at Christmas time. And it's what I have in my cute little mug here. And I really like it. This is really good. It's light, but it's flavorful. And some of the teas, like, I see the ingredients and it sounds so good, but then I go to taste it and it just tastes like tea. Like, it doesn't have a lot of other flavor to it, but that one it's nice and flavorful. Okay, so the reading, the disappointing turns that my reading took. First of all, the Divine Rivals. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still enjoying it, and I'm going to keep reading it. Based on everything I'm hearing what people say about it, I'm going to mostly enjoy this book. But there are a couple of things that have taken down my enjoyment level of it a little bit and have made it so that I cannot 100% recommend it to anyone and everyone. I have to be a little more careful about who I would recommend it to. And first of all, there is some cussing, some mild cussing, just random here and there. And then secondly, there is a lesbian relationship in here, which is a side character, and I'm not sure how large a part in this story it's going to play. Based on what I'm hearing from other people, not a huge part. More than I was expecting, actually, but those kind of made it a little bit disappointing for me. But I'm still enjoying the beautiful writing and the actual story so far. We'll see what my end feeling will be. But even more disappointing was this one. Guys, I did not even make it through the prologue, and I decided I'm done. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe I'm being overly critical, so totally possible. It is definitely possible that many of you would really read and enjoy this book. However, I really prefer biographies to be, I don't know how to describe it well, fact-based. I mean, obviously, every biographer is going to bring a sort of bias and their own perspective and worldview to the story, even of another true person. But I feel like there should at least be some effort made to tell the actual person's own story rather than your interpretation of their story, which is what I feel like we're getting here. So, which I guess is a little bit the nature of the beast, because in this book, Marian Veevers is comparing and contrasting the lives of Jane Austen and Dorothy Wordsworth, who was the sister of William Wordsworth. And she's comparing them along the same lines of the contrast that Jane Austen set up in the book Sense and Sensibility, or reason versus emotion. And at the beginning of the story, so far where I'm at, she is, you know, as teenagers, Jane showed more of like a reasoned kind of temperament, whereas Dorothy was more of the sensible kind of like the overly romantic kind of temperament, overly emotional. And, you know, she was giving samples of that. I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. I mean, that's fine. But I guess maybe looking at it through that lens lends itself to more editorializing, more projecting, which is the thing that I take issue with, the projecting. I just want a biographer to tell the person's actual story. That's really what I want. And I was just getting hints in the prologue that that's not what this was going to be, that it was just going to be Marian Veevers' opinions of her superimposing her 21st century worldview onto these 19th century women. And I wasn't really enjoying that. And I was afraid that the whole book would be that. So I started looking at reviews, and based on what people were saying in the 2- and 3-star reviews on Goodreads, I don't think it's going to improve anymore, because a lot of people were saying that there was a lot of, well, we don't really know what Jane Austen thought about this, but probably, or Dorothy never really said, but we can assume, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's a waste of my time. I want to read about the actual people and what they actually said about something and their actual reactions. And if we don't have their actual reactions, I don't want a biography to be projecting on that to them as if it were true. I feel like I'm not explaining very well, but I just know that it's going to end up being frustrating to me the whole way through the book. So I am just going to DNF. I have way more books that I want to read. I don't really waste my time on something that I don't think I'm going to really enjoy or get much out of. Now, I am curious to learn more about Dorothy Wordsworth. She sounds like a very intriguing sort of person, but I think this is not the context in which I want to read about her. The next book I will be picking up, in addition to continuing through Divine Rivals, is 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. Someone gave this to me almost a year ago, so it's been on my TBR shelf for a while, and I really want to read it. So this is the next one I'm going to pick up. As far as nonfiction goes, this will be the one that I keep in progress. So beyond that, I need to decide if I will read this one, Dear Jane Austen, A Heroine's Guide to Life and Love, or The Appeal by Janice Hallett, both of which I really want to read. This one is clearly a lot longer, but possibly more engrossing. But this may be what I need until I finish Divine Rivals, which should be in the next day or two. And then this can maybe be my final book for January. So probably we'll be picking up one or the other of these. I guess we'll all find out in the next clip which direction I go.
Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday afternoon, and I have a few minutes. So I stopped at Starbucks because, let me just tell you, a very popular teacher gift, and for a good reason, is Starbucks gift cards. So I got probably close to $75 worth of Starbucks gift card money that I have on my app. So I stopped at Starbucks, and after enduring a couple of weeks of extremely low temperatures for Virginia, now you northern people don't mock me or anything, but I'm talking single digits in the teens in the mornings, at least. There were some days where it didn't get much higher than that. Anyway, we've had really cold winter temperatures lately. So today it actually cracked 40, I think. So it feels like a heat wave. And so I was in the mood for an iced drink, which is very strange because I normally don't do that at all in the winter. But I think it was just the difference in temperature. So this is actually my favorite iced drink at Starbucks. Shaken espresso, and I get it breve with stevia and no simple syrup. So that is my drink of choice today. Okay, last night I stayed up until midnight. That was not a wise choice, I admit, but at the same time, I'm glad that I did. I don't really regret it, honestly. But I stayed up until midnight finishing Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. And I don't have too much to add to what I've already said. So I'll just sum up my thoughts overall about this book. So first of all, I love the prose. I think in my previous clips, I was saying that, I love the beautiful writing. Or maybe a little more specific. I love the beautiful prose. Prose that is where it's obvious that the author takes the time to really craft and shape their sentences and leans more towards a poetic choice of language. I love that. I'm a sucker for it. Charles Dickens, that's the primary reason why I love his writing, is his prose. Now, I wouldn't describe him as poetic because he's kind of wordy, but it's just like those unique turns of phrases and the way of describing things that's not just straightforward. I love it. I love it when authors play around with words, either ironically or poetically, or I love it. I love playing around with words, and I love when they really take advantage of the English language and exploit its depths. It's probably not the proper way to put it, but we're playing around with words here, okay? So it's all good. Anyway, there were so many places in this book where I was underlining. I didn't take the time to tab anything, but I was underlining just some phrasing that I thought that was particularly lovely or interesting. Here is one sample of some of the writing. This is one of the letters that the characters are exchanging with each other, because that's the main part of the story, is that these two characters are exchanging these letters kind of magically via these typewriters that kind of work like email, but they deliver actual physical letters. Anyway, this is one snippet from one. Do you ever feel as if you wear armor day after day, that when people look at you, they see only the shine of steel that you've so carefully encased yourself in? They see what they want to see in you, the warped reflection of their own face, or a piece of the sky, or a shadow cast between buildings. They see all the times you've made mistakes, all the times you've failed, all the times you've hurt them or disappointed them, as if that is all you will ever be in their eyes. How do you change something like that? How do you make your life your own and not feel guilt over it? So I was looking for more quotes, but I couldn't find them. But I did find some earlier when I was writing my Goodreads review, so I put some of them in there that I particularly liked. So if you're curious, you can go read those. Anyway, so I liked the prose and how she wrote this story. I really liked the relationship development between the two characters, Iris and Roman. That was really well done, and I liked their characters for the most part, and I liked how that part of the story developed. That romantic aspect was very well done, and the relationship building there, and the character development. I also liked, there were obviously some biblical allusions there in the, especially earlier on in the story when they were building up the whole premise of the war between the gods and some other stuff. When they were building all of that, there were even some phrases that the author used that were lifted straight from the Bible. And there were some concepts and topics like allegorical almost in a way. So that was kind of cool. And I also liked the allusions to, the way the whole storyline was set up. There was definitely a nod to You've Got Mail, which is always fun. Always like that storyline. And there was a hint of Lizzie and Darcy too. So I liked all of that stuff. All of that was fun. I liked the interesting, fantastical kind of world building. It was a little bit inconsistent, in my opinion, which I noticed I wasn't the only person to mention that on Goodreads. In fact, other people made a much bigger deal of it than I do. It didn't make me hate the story, but I did notice that the world building and it was a little inconsistent. I did not like the ending, and not because it's a cliffhanger, although, whatever, it's a duology, so that makes sense that it would be a cliffhanger. I just felt like the last couple of chapters were extremely melodramatic, and there was so much that happened, like boom, 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 in those last couple of chapters, and you know, these severe sudden twists and like overwrought emotional scenes was too much for me. I was like, okay, well, it's just, no, I'm not here for that. So I didn't love the ending for those reasons. So that brought it down a little bit for me. I mentioned earlier, like the content issues that I had with it. So that brought it down a little bit. It wasn't enough to make me stop reading or hate it, but it did bring it down a little bit as being not a favorite and not something that I could wholeheartedly recommend, because I know that it could be a complete deterrent for some people, and I understand that. Also, I should warn you, most people I think know this because it's many people have mentioned this, that there is a scene towards the end after the couple gets married that it's sort of open door. I mean, it really crosses a line there, like it's really on the line, I guess I should say, between open door, closed door. So you should know that. That might help you decide whether or not you want to read it, if you're on the fence or if you're interested in it. But anyway, so that's that. I settled on 4 stars on Goodreads, and that's fair, because as far as story enjoyment goes, like I stayed up late and I wanted to finish it, so that's a good thing, right? And I enjoyed a lot about it. However, when all things are taken into consideration and everything that I feel about the story, and more objectively, I would give it 3 stars. So I settled on 3.5. That's kind of where I'm landing with that. That's what I put on Storygraph. So that's that one. And because we still have, 2.5 more days in January, because January is the month that never ends. It just keeps going on forever and ever. The good thing is that means I can read more, right? So anyway, I still have 2.5 more days in January, which means I have time possibly to get, well, at least I can start this one. I don't know if I'll finish it depending on what I got going on the next couple of days, but I am going to start The Appeal and at least try that one. I'm interested in it. So I did also pick up, as far as nonfiction goes, 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. And I'm enjoying the author's very readable and interesting writing style. I'm enjoying that. I will say his theology was a little interesting. And I'm still reading like his foundational discussion about, you know, where he's laying his foundation of what he's going to be talking about, phones and stuff. And he's talking about how there's this whole arc of technology development starting in the Garden of Eden and culminating in the new heaven and the new earth, where the streets are going to be lined with gold. And he's saying that man's development of technology is leading us from the one to the other. That's a new perspective for me. I mean, I'm on board with him all the way up until the point where it's the new heaven and the earth, and somehow we are the ones who, people are the ones who, God, I don't want a new heaven and a new earth that people made. And Jesus said that he was building it. I'd rather have Jesus' new heaven and new earth than anything any people made. So I'm not really sure what he meant exactly by that, but I was a little bit taken aback by that approach. So maybe he's not actually saying that. I find that really, I don't know. That was really way out of left field for me. But it's just all part of his discussion on, you know, how God uses technology for good, but also because we're people, it can be used for bad as well. I also feel like, I'm not sure, there's some disagreement about whether or not the earth as it is will be fully and completely destroyed. There's some people believe that that's how the best interpretation of scripture. Other people believe that it will be like purified by fire. So it will still be earth, but it will be like a purified by fire sort of earth. Regardless, how much man-made technology, and by technology, he's not just talking about computers and appliances and cars and cell phones. He's talking about all of the things, the tools that we have created to help us to live. That's technology. How much of all of that is going to survive into the new heaven and the new earth? Because if it's going to be tried by fire or destroyed completely by fire, depending on how you interpret the passages of scripture regarding that, that's weird. So I'm reserving judgment until I get past that, because that's just the introduction. He's just laying his theological viewpoint here. I'm not sure how much it will affect his actual discussion on how your phone is changing you. So I think there still will be much in here that's worth reading and interesting. But that part was like, what? Okay, that's interesting. Never ever heard that perspective before. So that is my reading so far this week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hello, it is Thursday evening, and I just wanted to make a quick video about two things. First of all, one, I think I must have been mistaken. I must have misread, misunderstood somehow what he was saying about the whole theology of the arc of technology going from creation to the new creation. Because he finishes his introduction by saying, well, it's towards the end of his introduction. He says, "We do not trust in handheld things. We do not trust in handmade things. Instead, we long to be in the presence of our triune God in a new creation, built not by human ingenuity and sinful hands, but by the very design and innovation of God, the sinless and deathless and tearless creation God has always intended." So I wanted to make sure I cleared that up, because I was obviously confused by what he was saying earlier and didn't understand. Secondly, I am reading The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I'm halfway through, and I need to know. I need to know. So I'm going to keep reading. See you next time. Bye. It is Friday night, also known as January 31st, the last day of January. And I just finished my final book for January, The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And I really enjoyed this. So it was an epistolary version of a murder mystery. And it fits the email prompt for Epistolary January, because it is all like emails, text messages, some documentation, some newspaper articles, some police transcripts, and some inter-office communication. So some WhatsApp communication. So very interesting. I really enjoyed this twist on a murder mystery and this creative way of writing it and telling it. I don't read a lot of mysteries, so I don't feel qualified to speak to the quality of the mystery itself. I did figure out some aspects of the story, and I was suspicious of some things, but I wasn't sure. I was questioning myself as to which direction to go. And so I didn't fully figure everything out, but I was definitely picking up on some of the clues that were laid. I found it interesting. I found it very easy to read. The brevity of the messages makes it move very quickly as a read. So it keeps you moving and it keeps you reading. And it was very engrossing. And I feel like this author, Janice Hallett, like, she went there. Like, she went places that might seem sacred to other people, but the actual issues involved in this case and the potential issues were all like really great ones to highlight in a book, in my opinion. So I was overall very pleased. I would say in terms of actual enjoyment level of the story, I would say a 5 stars. There was some cussing, and it wasn't enough that made me feel like I couldn't read anymore. But I do know that some people would probably object to the cussing that was in here. So there's that as far as content warning goes. Beware of that. Be mindful of that. Other than that, I mean, I enjoyed it very much. So that is my final clip for the week as far as what I have been reading. However, I do want to take a few minutes and share a January recap, just to kind of go over the whole month and how I did on the various challenges and prompts and readathons, etc. And so I will be back in a minute to do that. Okay, so let's wrap up this video by wrapping up January and seeing what I read. First of all, here is my book tracker page in my journal for it. These are the books I read in January. A total of 10 books. So 10 books is not bad at all. That's actually pretty normal for me. For nonfiction, I added 2 books to my list for the year. One is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff, and the other is Sound Worship by Scott Aniol. I don't know how to say his last name. Tragically, there are no 5-star reads. I didn't add any to my journal. I also did not reread anything, so nothing on that page. I did, however, add a book to my 50 by 50, so now I have 3 read. And Pamela was the one that I added there. So I've read Pamela, Dracula, and Othello off of that list. One of my goals this year was to read half the books that I read be from my shelf. And out of 10 books, 4 of them were from my shelf. So 40%, not quite half. So I'll have to make up for that in another month. For my Reading the Classics challenge, go this way. The prompt was to read a book from your physical TBR, and I read Pamela, which was on my shelf, a classic that I needed to read. And for the scavenger hunt aspect, the items to look for were a book, a male protagonist, and winter. And I had a book. That's all. I mean, there was, a male character, because theoretically it was kind of like, I don't know that he would be a protagonist, though. I kept looking for winter. I marked it off because I think I got confused. I think it was a different book, but it wasn't a classic, so I wouldn't say that there was really any winter involved. For the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge by Chantal, the prompt for January was beauty, and I read Only the Beautiful by Susan Meissner, so I did cross that off my TBR. And for Jane Reads Christian Fiction Challenge, I was using a bonus prompt for January, which was to read a book tour recommendation. So I went with Positively Penelope by Pepper Basham, and that was very good. Now, the main thing I was focusing on was Epistolary January. So I loved Epistolary January so much. It was so fun. And also, I did all the prompts, and I read multiple books that fit multiple prompts, and I loved all of them. Some of them are actually strictly epistolary, and some of them have epistolary elements in that, so which is fine. First of all, the ones that actually were fully epistolary and the prompts that they fit. Positively Penelope by Pepper Basham now does have, further you get in the book, some third-person narration, but it's largely structured around letters, so it's definitely epistolary. That fit email because it had email and text, and love letters because it is a love story. And so it also, of course, would fit with the correspondence, not package or journal, or free shipping. I guess free shipping would work because it was a library book. So then for the lost mail prompt and for package, which was more than 400 pages, I read Pamela by Samuel Richardson. Also includes correspondence there. And then for correspondence and free shipping, because I got it from the library, 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff. And that was also all letters, only letters. For the free spot in the middle, I did Shamela by Henry Fielding, which was also entirely epistolary. And for the email one, the Appeal by Janice Hallett. That fits for that one. And that also fits for airmail because it takes place in England. I don't think it's more than 400 pages, so I don't think it qualifies for package. Oh yeah, it is. So it's for package too. Okay, so then as for other books that were kind of like hybrid, not strictly epistolary, but had a lot of strong epistolary elements, I read The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, and that fits the journal prompt. So there were a lot of journal entries in that book. And also the whole story was based on actual journals of a real woman in that the story was about. Also, the Berlin letters I put for the airmail prompt because it was set in Berlin. And it was not entirely letters, but letters were they played a key part in the story, as you can tell by the title. So the letters were very, very important. They didn't form the narration of the story, but they were very important. And then Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross also features letters very strongly. It's a huge part of the plot, although most of it is a narration. And that fit for love letters. Yeah, that covers all of them. So that was so much fun. I really enjoyed that. I really loved reading all of those books. For our Celebrating Jane Austen celebration, there were two options, Pamela by Samuel Richardson and The Lost Memoirs of Jane Austen. And I read Pamela because I had already previously read The Lost Memoirs of Jane Austen, and I really enjoyed that. Now, I was surprised by how many different places I went. In the United States, we went to California with Only the Beautiful. And then, goodness, I'm not going to remember where these took place. Maine was Frozen River. That took place in Maine. New York, 84 Charing Cross Road. Helen Hanff is in New York, and she is writing people in England. Then Virginia, the Berlin Letters, the main character, she actually lives in Arlington, Virginia, or works in Arlington, Virginia, and then goes into DC. And then North Carolina, the Positively Penelope is in North Carolina, and then a fictitious country across the ocean. Then for the world, as I figured, I'm able to cross off England off the list. Knocked that off right away with multiple books that I read that were set in England. Pamela, The Appeal. Well, maybe that's all. 84 Charing Cross Road. Shamela. All right. All in England. But also, I was able to cross off Germany because of the Berlin Letters, as well as Austria and Switzerland with Only the Beautiful, because part of it takes place there as well. So I knocked off a lot of places there on the world map. And so that is my January reading. In this journal, I'm keeping track of the actual books that I read. So I'll just go through them in order very quickly and say overall my rating of them. And because I've talked a lot about them. If you watched my previous videos, I don't need to say too much, but just to recap. And I read everything on my primary TBR and then some. I think there were some epistolary ones that were like options. Like, for example, I know The Historian was an option that I really wanted to get to, and I did not. And also the Secret Journals of Charlotte Bronte or something I wanted to get to, and I did not. That would have been for the journal prompt. So there were some I did not get to, but there were also some on my list that I got to that I wasn't necessarily planning on it. So it all worked out. That's kind of why I try to keep a loose pile of possibilities, because, you never know what you might end up doing. So first I read The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, and I gave it 4 stars. I had a lot of 4-star reads, so it wasn't terrible. I just didn't have anything like that stuck out as a really strong 5-star read. Positively Penelope was 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed that. It was a fun story. Pamela by Samuel Richardson, I settled on 2.5 stars. That one was, there were parts about it that were just like, what am I reading? What am I reading? But there were also things about it that I really enjoyed, not the least of which is it really made me think. It was interesting. 84 Charing Cross Road, 4 stars. Enjoyed that. Shamela, 1 star. Only the Beautiful by Susan Meissner, 4.5 stars. So that got really, really, really super close to being a 5-star read. But there were just a couple of things about it. Nothing big, hugely problematic. I just didn't quite have that full-on 5-star feel for me. But it was very good. The Berlin Letters, 4 stars. Definitely enjoyed it. Great story. I don't normally like spy stories, but that kind, I could handle. That sort of, like the cryptography kind of stuff. I like that. That's interesting. And then Sound Worship was a nonfiction. It wasn't life-changing. It wasn't amazing or anything. Divine Rivals was great. 3.5 stars. Not a perfect book, but it was a fun read, and I really enjoyed the writing style. I'm not sure if I will read the next book in this series or not. I probably will eventually, but it was good. And then I wrapped everything up with The Appeal by Janice Hallett and gave that 4.5 stars. So that one and Only the Beautiful were my closest to being 5-star reads, and they got really, really close. So definitely some good reading and some interesting reading for sure. I was surprised by how many of these were recently published books. I don't read a lot of recently published books. The Appeal was published in 2021, Divine Rivals in 2023, The Berlin Letters in 2024, Only the Beautiful in 2023, Positively Penelope in 2023, and The Frozen River in 2023. That never happens. It was a very contemporary month for me. So that's unusual. I did also have a book that was published in 1740 and a book that was published in 1741, as well as a book that was published in 1970. So had the classics in there as well. And I think the Sound Worship one was from 2010. So not quite as recent. You know, overall, a good mix of reading this month. Definitely very enjoyable. I don't regret any of the books that I read, with the possible exception of Shamela. I could have lived happily without reading that one. But the rest of them were really engaging, interesting, and whether or not I gave them 5 stars, I definitely enjoyed reading them. So all in all, I will say it's a great month, and I will see you next time. Bye. I forgot. Before I close off for this week, I need to announce the giveaway winner, although I can't exactly. So the giveaway for January was this reading journal from a shop I found on Etsy, Magpie Treasures. So I will be sending someone this journal and also a gift card to Pango Books or another online bookseller of their choice. The winner was chosen by King Sumo, the giveaway third-party app that I used, and so they don't give me any information except the winner's email address, which the handle part of it was Knit Spin Stitch, I think. So I will be sending that person a email to get the information to send them their gift, and so be on the lookout for that if that is you, and congratulations to the winner of the January giveaway. And please be looking this week for a very special video where I will be announcing the February giveaway and also a collaboration with another YouTuber. And I am very excited about this collaboration. It will be a lot of fun. I am really looking forward to it. So there will be a video posted this week with more information about that. And now I am signing off, and I will see you next time. Bye.